it.
Any hands?
100%.
Okay, cool. And then if we're in the room and anyone has a question, then I'll just give you the mic. We'll try. Okay. So today I'm doing in the news. And let's see what we've got. Okay. It's not a very cool in the news like Jonathan usually does in the news with all these like fancy slides. Mine's a lot more basic. And some of these things aren't actually new at all. But I think they're pretty cool, and I should just tell you about them anyway, just in case you don't know. This is new. This is an experimental feature in Power Apps. It's brand new, and generally I would say you probably shouldn't use experimental features in production applications because they may just go away at some point. But it is pretty cool. There's a new function which is the parse JSON function, and this has been in Power Automate for a while. And often what happens when we want to work with JSON in Power Apps, what we do is we call a flow, pass it the JSON, or we ask it to give us JSON back, and we get it to do the work. And basically now you don't need to do that. You can just use the parse JSON function in a Power App, give it text essentially, and then it returns an object. So for example, here what they're doing is they're putting it into a table object. So now I can reference the data in a table rather than trying and doing like weird string manipulation to get what you want. So that's experimental. That's just an example, but there is more on the Microsoft blog on this new function. I went for the real hardcore tech stuff this time. So number 2, there's a public preview of IP-based cookie binding. And essentially what this is this is a security feature. It's in preview, and the recommendation is you can use it in like sandbox environments, but not production environments. And this helps prevent what they call cookie relay attacks, where someone intercepts a cookie, like an authentication cookie, and replays it to the Dataverse API, pretending to be somebody else, and then being able to essentially get data out of the Dataverse or put data in or whatever it might be. So what this is essentially, it, in quotes, stops that by putting an IP address in the cookie, and then it matches to see whether that IP address matches the IP address of where the cookie is actually coming from. And if they don't match, then it's a replay attack. So that's essentially what it does. You don't have to know the details behind it, but this is a preview feature that you can go and turn on. This is not new, but I thought this is quite cool to share. And I know Jonathan has shared this before, but there's these new preview controls called collaboration controls, which are designed for model-driven applications. So if I'm building a Power App that's a model-driven app, in the past, in the Dataverse, there's a table called tasks. There's activities. You can go and create a new activity and create a meeting, a task, and your own custom activities, etc. But those don't hook into Microsoft 365, so they don't become tasks in Outlook. They don't. They're tasks. Another task. There's lots of task elements in the Microsoft platform. And so it's a bit odd. Or if I create a meeting, it sends a meeting request, but it's not like integrated into your diary. So what actually this is technically under the hood, what they've done is you can go and add these controls to a model-driven app. So you'll see there, this is, let's say we've got a model-driven app and there's a product table in the Dataverse. And I want to add a tab called tasks. Maybe I want to add some tasks related to a product. And so when I go and click new task there, in this case, it's actually going to go and create tasks in Planner. And the way it's technically working under the hood is they've created virtual tables for quite a few Microsoft 365 entities. So in Microsoft 365, there's the graph, and the graph exposes tasks and meetings, etc., etc. And SharePoint files is another example. So they've created virtual tables So they look like Dataverse tables, but they're not actually in the Dataverse. So there's a table called tasks, but it's not in the Dataverse. It's actually the Microsoft Graph. And so this means I can start creating relationships between any Dataverse table and the tasks table. And that's essentially what's happening here. So now there's a relationship between the product table and tasks. So I can create tasks associated to products or whatever it might be. And then you can, and literally you get the UI here as well, which looks like Planner. But then you can switch to Planner and see the tasks there as well. And when you mark a task complete in Planner, you come here, it's complete. Pretty cool. Yep. Yeah. So those are the different entities: approvals, files, meetings, notes, and tasks. And those are not notes from the Dataverse. Those are notes from Microsoft 365. Pretty cool, hey? And you related to this is you'll see more and more connectors that can be virtual table connectors. And the idea is that most standard Power Platform connectors will expose the data as virtual tables as well, which will be pretty cool.
Quite like that approvals one. Feels, just a disclaimer, I'm not a big fan of the out-of-the-box approvals in Power Platform because or Power Automate. It feels like it's difficult to get to them. It's difficult to it's not easy surfaceable in the app, in a app where this makes it a lot easier to do.
Thanks, David. Your point is noted. Thanks, Steve.
I didn't have a point actually.
Well, your point was that you don't like approvals in Power Automate. Okay, so this is another one that's pretty interesting. It's also actually been in the Wave 2, sorry, the Wave plans for over a year, actually. But I thought I'd highlight it because I actually get this quite a lot. And that is, how do I archive data out of the Dataverse, but still have it available if I need to bring it back into the Dataverse or view it or get access to it. So this is a new feature. It's supposed to be in public preview this month. And essentially, it's an extension of there's a feature in the Dataverse that allows you to continually export data in near real time to Azure Data Lake. And essentially, this builds on top of that. And so it makes the data that's in the data lake available back to the Dataverse. And guess what? And guess how? Through a virtual table. So this virtual table thing is it's becoming more and more pervasive. I don't know if that's the right word, but certainly it's something that we haven't spoken about a lot, and you'll see it more and more. So yeah, this is pretty cool. And so hopefully that data is kept too, and we can see how that feature works. Because I have a few organizations where their Dataverse sizes are massive, and they're trying to cut costs in terms of storage costs, and so they're looking at how they can archive stuff out of the Dataverse, and to a data lake would be a good idea because it's a much more cost-effective place to put it. Oh my word, we're talking about virtual tables again. There seems to be a theme here. Maybe we need a whole session on virtual tables, but this is one that's also like related, I guess, and that is that another virtual table that we're going to be able to support is a virtual table to another Dataverse environment. So I can have two Dataverse environments. Maybe there's two different business units that each have their own Dataverse, but they want to be able to reuse each other's data without duplicating it. So maybe there's like, I don't know, master data in quotes, which is products or departments or something like that, and I want to reuse it from other environments without having to replicate it. So I can actually have a virtual table to another Dataverse instance, and so it looks like it's in one Dataverse, and then I can use that table. The public preview, long time away, January. It'll be our Christmas present. And then this one is related to the topic that Jonathan's going to talk about. And this one is actually more of a sad news, actually, because the public preview date last week said August. So adaptive cards and Power Virtual Agent should have, in quotes, already released in public preview. But they weren't ready, and so they've pushed it back. And so now the new date that's been published this week is November. And essentially, this is not just adaptive cards and Power Virtual Agents, but it's the whole new designer in Power Virtual Agent, which is the .NET Bot Framework Composer and Power Virtual Agent have merged into one user interface. And so all the stuff you can do with Composer, which is some like hardcore logic around bots, and one of the things you could do was adaptive cards. That's being brought into the designer of Power Virtual Agents. And so that whole experience has been delayed for preview anyway until November. So I'm a little upset about that, because this is one of the things I've been waiting for a while. Every time I have to do an adaptive card in PVA, I have to call out to Composer, and it's just not cool. Anyway, it is what it is. And if you have no idea what an adaptive card is, well, the good news is Jonathan is going to tell us all about adaptive cards. Before he does that, the next meetup will be hybrid. We will start at 4:30. so those of you that are online are welcome to come here. I'll give away prizes. The prizes will be hamburgers at 6 o'clock, and chips and drinks. But that'll happen anyway. So we were thinking, what do you want to do in the next meetup? We can go through a topic of building sites with Power Pages and what that looks like. Or we could talk about Power Platform landing zones. Landing zones is kind of like Microsoft's blueprint and best practice for environments and your environment strategy. Yes, so Azure has the same concept of a landing zone. So Power Platform now has the concept of a landing zone. And literally it's like saying, rename your default environment to personal productivity and disable all like custom connectors and premium connectors. Make it Microsoft 365 connectors only. Every time you need an environment for this scenario, then create 3. Dev, test, prod. So it's a very prescriptive guidance on what your environments should look like, and what you should be turning off in your environments and what you should be turning on. And it's not just prescriptive guidance. It actually is, in Azure, it's templates. So you get this UI and then you say, go, and it goes and creates all your environments for you and switches off stuff and switches on stuff. And so suddenly now you have all your environments set up according to best practice, which is pretty cool. The downside is you need to know what you're doing because suddenly it goes and turns off a whole bunch of stuff in environments that people are using. And then everyone's like, why does my SQL connector not work anymore? So that's, in summary, what Power Platform landing zones are. So we could show that, talk to it. That's something. The Power Platform conference is happening this month, so we could do a feedback session on the big sessions and learnings from that. Or does anyone want to demo something that they've been working on? In the room online. Any hands? Okay, anyone online, if you do want to present something or demo something, just pop it in the IM window, and then we can, so you've got 40 minutes or so to think about it. We always like that. We like to see stuff that other people are working on. What are people building? What are people doing? Oh, there we go. Any comments online on this?
It's all quiet, Mike.
No, very quiet. There's a hero saying he wants to He could try to present what he did in Teams adaptive cards, but yeah. So let's see. Let's definitely have a look at that. Yeah.
In the room, if you had a preference of any of these? Landing zones? Landing zones? Okay. Okay, we have a problem. Everyone just says everything. Yeah, okay. Okay, cool. Jonathan,
Yes.
can I hand over to you?
Second. I'm assuming you can all hear me all right. Sorry, Mike, repeat that.
Do you want lunch?
I'd love some food.
I'm going to hand over to you.
Perfect. Can you see my screen all right on your side?
Kind of, kind of.
Loud and clear online.
There, Mike, that
There we go.
see.
Good. I'm gonna go on to mute, and then there's a question.
Perfect. So, good afternoon, everyone. What I'm going to take you through today is adaptive cards. Now, I've been playing with adaptive cards for a while, and there's a couple of tricks in that I've learned, so I want to share them with you today. We're just going to go through, firstly, what are adaptive cards, how you utilize them, and then we're going to get into going through two scenarios. One, posting an adaptive card to Outlook and getting a response back, and then also posting to Teams and getting a response back. And I'll just go through some of the gotchas and things that you need to look out for during that. I wanted to do the PVA, but as you can see, it's been delayed again, unfortunately. So hopefully next time we will be able to show that. Now, just to start off, what are adaptive cards? And I can almost guarantee that everyone's interacted with adaptive cards in one way or another. You just might not have known that you were dealing with adaptive cards. So think of these as components of a UI. These are really platform agnostic little snippets that you can use between applications and services. And these are typically authored in JSON. Now, what happens when you send a adaptive card to an application? That JSON is then transformed into that application's native UI experience. And it really helps the card that you're presenting adapt to the surroundings. So whether you're posting it in Outlook, whether you're posting it in Teams, or even in PVA, it is going to make sure that that experience is still great and you can still see what is going on and be able to engage with that card. Now, here's a perfect example of what an adaptive card is. We can see all the details on side here. We can see, okay, this is an adaptive card. We've got the schema inside there. We've got the card version. The card version is going to be important when you are building out these things. There are new features that get released that are only available in some versions. And what you might find is some functionality only works in older versions as well. You'll pick this up as you're going through it. But then you can see my card over here is basically broken up into two text fields. I've got the welcome to adaptive cards and then that simple, lightweight, and very capable. And these are the two text blocks here that we're working with. So we can see there the type of the element, the actual text that's stored in there, and then we get some formatting inside there as well. Same with this one, but in this one, we don't have all the formatting. We've just got the type and the text block over there. So that is essentially how an adaptive card is broken up. And don't worry, we'll get into building these out shortly. Now, think of these as lightweight platforms and that are purely declarative. There's no coding required. So if you know JSON, you're familiar with it, you'll be able to pick this up very quickly. These are also safe by default. It's built into the platform, the way you're calling these things. There's not really many places that attackers can take advantage of, and it plays well with other applications and services that you're making use of. This has also been a one Microsoft effort to put this together. There are multiple teams within Microsoft which has been working on this to make a single way to display these cards, as opposed to each division going and building out their own solution, which could be problematic and could pose challenges with implementations and usage across the various platforms. It is also completely open source and very community driven. Now, what it is not, just one thing to be aware, it is not a fully fledged app or runtime. Okay, it's what you would be utilizing within apps. Think of it as a UI technology only on its own. Now, just to show you some examples of some adaptive cards, and this is where you might start recognizing some of them that you may have engaged with. These adaptive cards can be done across multiple platforms, not just Teams and Outlook, but think about Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn, websites. There are multiple places you can lay these out. So you can start to see you may have already engaged with some of these in the past. Now, the great thing about it, even if you're not very familiar with JSON, there's an easy way to author and get started. And we're going to dive into that now. We've got the Adaptive Card Designer that you can access through the adaptivecards.io website. And let's jump into that quickly. Okay. So if you go to adaptivecards.io, this is just going to give you an overview on adaptive cards. We can go and see the latest release of version 1.5. We can also have a look at what the roadmap is. But you can start to see how it explains on what adaptive cards are. Now, to get started, you can go and look at the samples. Now, there is a great library available inside here with multiple sample templates to start off with. So like if I was looking at a stock updates, this is what the typical template would look like. And if I wanted to try using this, I can just simply click try it yourself. And that's going to jump me directly into the designer. We can also go and see weather compact. You can see that's quite nice. And I can once again go try it yourself. And then it opens up the designer. Now, the one thing you can see, we've got all the elements on the left-hand side of the left-hand side of the screen. And this is what we can use to go and update and change that card. Also, all the elements that we bring in have got their own properties. Like we can see this text block over here. When I click on it, it's highlighted, and now I get all the details associated with this text block. So I can go and make my changes and customize it as is needed. What we can also do, you can see a select host app. So I can go and change this, and this is going to show me what that card will look like in that specific app. It will also update the version. Okay, because depending on the scenario, depending on the application, it may require a different version. We can also go and see what this looks like in the Teams Dark interface, Teams Light interface, Viva Connections. So you can start to just get a feel on what your card is going to look like in those situations, just to make sure that it is displaying the way you want it to be displayed. Now, instead of working off of a template, because anyone can use a sample in a template and paste that in, let's start off with a new card from scratch. So you can see here, I've got a very basic empty card over here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email with this card, just asking for some feedback and getting some info back out from the people that it's getting sent to. So I'm going to start off by just taking this text block and dragging it into the page. And now I can come in and put some text in here. So in this case, it's out here. So we are just asking for some feedback on how we can make in-person events better. And you can start to see, I can start going through the layout, the styling. Let's go and make it larger. Well, let's make it medium. Let's go and make it bolder. And we can go and set the color if we want. Let's go set an accent, and we can go and customize it as is needed. Now, what we also want to do is we're going to bring in a free text field so people can go in and type that response out. So you can see we do have a couple of inputs here that we can use to collect data from users. So I can do text, date, time, number, a choice, or even a toggle. But to keep it simple for today, I'm just going to bring in a text field over here. So this will now give me the ability for them to capture information in here. So I'm going to put in here, let's just go, I'll just copy this out. So what we're looking for here is just describe your thoughts on how we can improve the meetup. Okay. And we can go and set the style. The one thing I do want to bring in is multi-line so that it does spread it out over multiple lines so they can answer quite a bit. We can go and set the maximum length inside here as well. Now, the important part about using inputs is we need to make sure we have an ID that identifies them. Because when we're looking for a response back, it is going to be contained within that ID. And we can see the ID field over here on the text input. So for this one, I'm going to simply set this to answer. Okay. Come up with a naming standard that works for you. You could use something like AC_answer, like for adaptive cards, just to make sure you can separate it up. But for the sake of today, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Now, what we want to do from here is we also want to bring in an action. And this action is going to give us the ability to include a submit button on this form. Now, the way I'm doing this, I just want to change the target version down to 1.5 so it gives me more options. I can go and add an action. Aren't you coming up? I'm on the wrong connection, that's why. Outlook actionable messages. Let's go add an action, and then we got action HTTP. So for this to work, we do need an HTTP response because that's what's going to happen when you click that submit button. So there we go. We've got that action HTTP inside there. We've got the ID, the icon, all the information inside there. I'm just going to call this submit. And then you can see over here, we do need a URL in order for us to submit this across. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into Power Automate quickly, and we're going to go and create a new flow that goes and captures that HTTP response. I'm going to call this response from, come on. So inside here, I'm just going to search for HTTP. And I'm going to use that one when an HTTP request is received. Okay. Now, inside here, you want to paste the body of the response that you are going to get back so it understands how to interpret the response headers or the response that is coming through. The URL you can see will be generated after you have saved it. But now what I've already done is I've already copied this out. We are looking for the response by the user. And you can see we've got the details inside there, once again, written in JSON, so it's easy to understand. Looking for an object and the response by the user, and we'll configure that all shortly. And then we're going to just go and add a new step, and we want to go to our data operations, and we are going to compose this data, and that's going to be the body from there, so we can start interpreting what is going on in that section. Let's save this quickly, and then you'll see this URL gets generated for us. And now we can use that URL in that previous step when we were setting it up. Okay. Any questions so far?
Looking good on this side. No questions online.
There's a question from the room.
Great.
Correctly that it's a premium connector, the trigger.
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Did I see correctly that it's a premium connector, the trigger?
Yes. Yeah, the HTTP request is a premium connector, yes. Okay, so then what we are going to want to do is once the person completes that form and they hit that submit button, we want a response to come back to them and update what that card looks like. So for this, we do need to design another card. Now, because we're doing this in line and we're going to be posting this as a response, what we need to do is we need to go and compose another JSON text inside here, and this is going to be our input that is going to be utilized later in the response. So this is how we're going to post that response back. I did go pre-write this quickly, and I'll take you through it. There we go. And let's just paste it in here. So we can see how we've got the adaptive card, we've got the schema version, we've got the text type, and then it's simply going to display text. Your feedback has been registered, and then there, thank you for your feedback. So there's 2 items inside there. Now, the great thing about the design is you can go and test and see how your design is going to look. So let's go into the designer quickly. Let's go and paste our information in there, and we can see that it is displaying correctly. So this is working fine for that scenario. Okay. So then we've got that in, and then the last step which we want to bring in is a response to that request. So let's go response. There we go. Once again, this is a premium connector. So status code we'll leave as is, and then we're going to go and create one property. And this is card update in body. Let me just copy this up here quickly so I'm getting the spelling right. And then we're going to set this value to true. And then that response we are going to use from that outputs from this step over here. And then I'll show you how we can bring in some additional items just now based on how this runs. Okay, so let's save this. We've got our response sorted out, and we're almost ready to go back to our paste this somewhere. So I've got it safe. Make sure I've got it. Yeah, there we go. So inside here, we're going to come in and paste that. No, that's the icon URL. We don't want that. We want this URL over here, and we are going to post. So I could have a get inside there if I wanted to, but in this scenario, we are purely using a post command because we want to post that information that we sent through. Okay, so now what we do is the body, we need to transform that request to make sure that we can respond correctly. So inside here, we are just going to quickly show it how it needs to respond to this. So we're going to say response by user. Okay. And then we are going to bring in that actual response. So double quotes, answer value, and close quotes, and then the last squiggly brackets. Okay. So that is essentially what we are going to be posting back when we send that response. And we saw earlier, when we were looking at that flow, we can see the response by user. So that's the value that we are looking for when we are putting it inside over here. Okay. Now, let me just check, make sure that everything right. Sure, that looks
Sorry,
good.
Jonathan.
Yes.
Quick question. Is that case sensitive?
Yes, it will be case sensitive.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And then we can see over there, we can add a new header because now we want to make sure that the header comes through correctly. And we are going to, let's just change our target version here because I now was running into issues with this earlier. So in the header, I'm going to go authorization. And then I'm going to leave blank for now, but I'm going to add in the card type so it knows, or the content type, so it knows what this info is. Content type, and this is going to be JSON. Okay. And that's everything we need over there. That looks good. Let me just double check. Yeah, that's fine. So now our card is ready to send. That's fine. We didn't need to set an ID. Just making sure. Yes, yeah, that all looks good. So now the easiest way to copy the card out, we can just up at the top here, we can say copy card payload. And now I'm just going to go into another flow. Let's go and create another one here quickly. This is going to be an instant cloud flow, manually trigger, and this is feedback. Obviously, you can have whatever steps you need before this one to correctly populate it. But for now, we are just going to keep it basic and straightforward. So we are going to say, send an email. Okay, so there we go, send an email v2. I'm just going to send it to myself for this test. Request. And then inside here, the body of the message, because we want to specify actual JSON, we need to go and make sure we are using the code view to make sure that we can populate it correctly. Now, I can't go and post the JSON in here. So what I need to do is I need to create another step just to compose it like I did earlier. So let's just go and add an action, built-in data operation, and then compose. And then I'm going to paste in that response inside there. So we've got all the details inside there. We've got the text block, we've got the input text, we've got the ID that's associated, and then we've got the submit inside there and the URL which it is posting to, and then all the details inside there that we need from there. Then we jump into the email. Let's expand it out. Let's go into that code view again. And I did copy this out previously. Let me just, sure I'm using the right outputs. So essentially there we've got that script. We're just telling it that we are putting in an adaptive card that's in JSON, and we are actually putting in that compose that we did earlier. And we can save. Sure that everything's fine. What you will find is if there is a problem with your JSON, it will actually give you an error. Maybe you haven't closed off a section, or maybe you've got some parameters that are invalid inside there. It will give you an error, and what I would usually do is copy it out, paste it into the designer, and see if it is still generating correctly. Because during the process, you may have either copied incorrectly or you've made some changes and that's caused some problems. So I've seen that happen in the past. So let's go and test this. I'm going to run a manual test. Continue, and let's run this flow. Okay. And there we go. We've got our feedback request. And there we've got our card. And then directly in here, I'd say some beers would be great. And I can submit this across, wait for that response header to go through. If that's working correctly, that should update and show the correct item inside there. Let's see. Okay, looks like I've had a problem with that flow running. Let's just go and see what happened with that one. Inside here, that succeeded. Why didn't it update that card? Good. See my flow. Okay, so we can see the response is received. See there, that's being composed over there. There we've got the response by the user, got the compose, and then the response. So something fishy happened in my response for some reason. It could be that version that may be the problem. Let's just try and do that quickly. Let's fix this on the flyer. Edit, and let's change this to version 1, and then see if that fixes it. There, version 1. Save. It shouldn't though. That should fine. Test. Doesn't update that previous one. Hopefully it does. problem on that one because it skipped that first response. Let me show you, I had it running inside here, the same scenario. Just bring it up. And there we go. You can see straight away it's picked up and then that new card is being displayed. There might just be 1 or 2 steps that I missed previously. I'll just go back and double check and make sure that everything's right. But you can see there it is coming through. Yeah. Any questions so far from anyone?
No questions. This just a lot of positive feedback online.
Great. Now, the next one I want to do is posting an adaptive card to Teams and getting a response back. And there are some gotchas inside here, and there's 2 ways you can get around it. So I'm just going to manually trigger this flow. I'm going to call this invoice approval. And I'm going to, what's nice about Teams is inside Teams, you've got the ability to post an adaptive card. So if we come down here, post an adaptive card and wait for a response. So you can post an adaptive card and then just leave it as that. But for the scenario, we want a response to come back before we move on. So similar to like you do the approvals, start an approval and wait for a response, we're doing the same thing inside over here. So this one we can choose if we want to post it as a Flowbot or Power Virtual Agent. We can choose whether we want to post it into a channel, a chat with a bot, or even a group chat. For this scenario, I'm going to post into a channel. Let's go and set our team. Let's do Contoso IT and general. And then that message is where we are going to be posting that card itself. Now, I've already built out the card. Let me just bring it into the designer so you can see what it looks like. So we can see this is an invoice approval. We can see please review the invoice, and this is issued for, and I've already got my text inside there to pull through the info. I've added some static data in here, but we will change this during the course. So I can actually come in, and where is that? So we've got the image. There we go, issued form. And then I can come in and put, it was this for demo. Okay. That's essentially the card that I've got. And then I've got an approve button or a reject button inside there. And you can see also inside there, we've got those action cards. You can see we've got that title, but we've got those IDs as well, which are important for us to be able to bring that information back and be able to utilize it later on. Okay, so let's just go into my flow and let's paste. Wait, I didn't copy it out. Let's just copy payload. And here, let's paste this. So we've got everything inside there. Check the version. Okay, so this is 1.4. Actually 1.3. 1.3, version 1.3 is what you can use when you're sending a chat to a single user. It does line it out. So if I have to come in here and go Teams Lite, you'll see there the selected target version 1.4 is only supported by bot send card. For user send cards, please use version 1.3. Okay, so keep an eye out on that. When you're testing, double check the version that you're using because it is going to make a difference. This did work fine on 1.3. Let's just make sure. Yeah, put that in again. Let's save and let's test and see what this looks like. Let's go and have a look at our response. Manually test. Continue. And then there we go. We see that adaptive card coming in there, and let's go approve, good, and confirm. Okay, so that's been responded to. Let's go and have a look at what that actual response looks like. So we can see there the data that's coming through is that looks good, that AC comments approve. That looks fine there. We can also see all the details on the responder. So who responded, when did they respond, the action that they chose. So if we go look at the raw outputs inside here, we can see that there is a lot of valuable information here that we can use moving forward. Now, we hard-coded the values inside this section. So now what I want to do is I want to make it a bit more adaptive. So let's go and edit this quickly. I'm going to add some inputs here to capture the company name. Company name. This was contact. And we want the value. Okay. So now I could come in and we just need to find the section where we need to put that in. So we're just going to scan here quickly. That's text block. Please approve the invoice, not that text block. There we go, issued for, and this one we are going to use the company name inside there. We're also going to come down to their demo. That's also going to be company. Admin over here, we're going to use for the contact. And the issue date will leave hard-coded. I haven't corrected that one. And then this value over here, let's bring in the value inside there. Okay. Now we can see, we can actually bring in that dynamic content into this flow as well. So there quickly. Next, company, Acme Corporation, admin at acme.com, and then the value is, let's set this to $870. And run that flow. Okay, perfect. Let's just go and check that invoice there. There we go. We can see there the name's updated, company name, contact, and the issue date and the values inside there. And we can go in and approve. Okay. And now's where it gets a little bit iffy and a little bit tricky. And it's kept me going backwards and forwards quite a bit when I first figured this out. So you can see over here, we get the responses. Okay, the info is great. The information is there. So let's see if we can go and add in a condition to just let someone know that this has been approved, or to confirm with the owner that it has been approved. So I'm going to bring in a condition control over here. Now this is where you can see where the problem comes in. There's no dynamic content coming out of this. Okay, so there's a couple ways to fix this. First way I know I've used a lot. The second way I'm going to try, it's brand new. Well, I haven't tried it before, but the easy way to do it, come into the body of the message, remove the dynamic content. Okay, once you've removed the dynamic content, you'll see there, now all of that new dynamic content is there for me to make use of. So in this case, I can go and use was submit action ID, and I can go and set the value inside there. The other way to do it is, and then we would say approved, and then it would be able to follow that process. So I could say if this was AC underscore approve, then go and let's send a Teams message. Just the message, flow bot, post in, chat with flow bot. And then I can go in and say, okay, let's use the user principal name for the person who responded. I'm going to say, you have approved invoice, and I can go and put in that dynamic content inside there. So I'm going to say the comment is inside there. And let's go in there. Company up there. And I can go save, and let's test and make sure this works. And then I'll show you the other way around it. Okay. Test. Avengers. Protect. Reset. And this is for right. Okay, but now we're going to see the message is going to come back blank because we didn't put those in. Could go and add them in, and I'll show you that it does work fine, even though they weren't there before. Okay, so I immediately got that response back. Let's see. That was approved, so we know that it is working and it's able to adapt that. But let's go in and check now and see what happens when we add that dynamic content back in. Issued for, this was company, down company name, contact, and then total amount is value. Okay, so let's save it. Let's test. We can use the previously used one. Should run through fine now. Let's just make sure. Okay. Okay, so there we go. We've got Avengers, Bruce, approve. Good. Confirm. And there we go, we get that chat straight away. So this shows that even though it's not available, it is still there. So if we go and edit over here, we can see we've got those comments in there. I don't have that dynamic content anymore because that's we're using dynamic content in the window itself. Okay, a way to get this out, let's just go in, and what I would suggest is rename this to something simple. Let's call this AC Teams, just to make it easy to call out that in the script itself. Let's save, and what does help is, okay, just wait, save, there we go. Let's go and just look at a previous flow run so we can get the insights out to make sure we're pulling through the right info. We look at that response inside them. We can see there what we want is that section over there. Okay, that's the comment. We don't want the comment. We want that there. Submit action ID. So what you would essentially do is we would go in and pull that submit action ID, and we can go and specify that manually in the condition itself. Like I said, this is something I've just learned. I've never tested it before, so we'll see now if it comes through as we expect it.
Have we lost Jonathan?
No, I'm still here. Sorry, just give me a second.
We were worried.
No, I'm still here. Okay, so what we're looking for is, let's go and add an expression. We're going to type body because we want the body to come through. Then we're going to put in the name of the step, which is AC Teams. And then we can close that off, question mark. And in this one, we are going to be using, based on that response, was AC. Great. Let me just open up another tab here quickly. Sorry. Sure, I get that text right because that is important. So that submit action ID is what we're looking for. Okay. So if I come in here, then go in and open up our brackets again, and we can go and put in that submit action ID. Okay. Wow. Right.
Should there not be square brackets?
Yeah, man. Yes. Thanks, Michael.
It wasn't me. It was Tian.
It was a Tian. Thanks, Tian.
Next to the first, the body should be round brackets, but
Yes,
then
yeah,
next
this
to the
one, the next
property,
one. Yes, there we go.
So what does Tian win?
Tian
The
definitely
bag.
gets a prize.
Food.
There we go. So there we go.
Very
AC
dusty,
approved.
broken bag.
Let's test and see if this works. Like I told you, I've never tested this way out. I found this today while I was just doing some brief read-ups. See on other things that we could include. Make sure that goes through. Let's get to the team. Approve. All right, there we go. So you can see that comes through and that's been approved. Okay. And that was essentially what I wanted to take you through today, just to help you see how to start playing with these cards, how to understand how to work with them. The design is a great way to start seeing what the impact of your changes make. So you can build this out. There is a plugin for VS Code as well, so you can build these out in VS Code directly, but you can bring them in here, test them out, and see how it's going to look. Change between all the various elements. And I also just wanted to show you some of those gotchas when you're working with dynamic content. So with that, are there any questions from anybody?
Jonathan?
Yes.
I may have something that can help in creating your expression. You know, the one that you were creating, square bracket, round brackets thing?
Yes.
If you go back into Power Automate, and this was a little like tip/issue that I've been having, in that in some of my environments, I've got the new expression builder, and in some of my environments, I've got the old expression builder, which is what you've got there.
Yes.
But you can actually turn on the new expression builder, and then it's got IntelliSense as you type there, and it actually fills it in for you, which is quite cool.
Nice.
So if you go back into Power Automate and you click the cog in the top right-hand corner, oh, you've got it. Okay, it's this weird UI. Can't see it there, but there's a setting there to turn on the new expression builder somewhere. Can't see it because the screen is too small. View all Power Automate settings, I think it might be.
Oh, there we go. Experimental features.
Yeah, turn that on. You should always use experimental features. Now when you go back and you edit your flow, and you may find the first problem goes away as well. I don't know, but if you go in there and now you click FX.
Ah, okay, that is great.
You get this one, and this one is quite cool because you can also select your parameters below, which you can't do with the other one. You have to remember every field name. So
yes, so that's great. Square brackets.
Much better.
I see. Yeah, that is awesome. Thanks for the tip, Mike.
Pleasure. And you might even find that content is actually there now as well, so you don't even need to manually.
Oh, is it?
Maybe. Maybe, I don't know. Just guessing.
Let's go and see. Still got that in there. You know, I've sworn at this thing trying to figure out what on earth is going wrong. Bring it in there. No, it's still not there.
Yeah,
So that doesn't fix that.
Can I add my 2 little cents to this? So thanks,
Yes, sir.
Michael, for that first tip, because I was fighting with our Office 365 admins, asking them why my colleague in Germany had this new experience that we're seeing right now, but mine was still old. Now I know what I need to do. I need to turn on experimental features. And then what I built a solution with Teams Adaptive Cards about a few months ago, probably April, and that issue about trying to read the data coming out of a card, the solution that I found was just to do a parse JSON on the card itself, and then all the values become available to use further down after that.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing. Well, that's what my solution was built as. So just if that helps anybody else.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
So what you would just do a compare or parse JSON from that body of the response.
I'm not a very technical person. I'm not a developer, but I'll paste it in the chat, and maybe somebody can understand what I've done there. But the only thing I needed to do was I had to write the output, the content. I had to write outputs and the name of AC Teams, for example, and that was it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks for sharing. No, that was the way I did it a while ago, and it was just so frustrating to do. I found these two ways seem to be a little bit easier, at least. But it is the one night I set up when I was building a card for an approval process, and I was scratching my head for at least an hour trying to figure out what on earth was going on. Why that dynamic content is just not coming through. At least you can see there is a way to get it done. So just some final thoughts to leave you on. Just make sure that you're checking the versions. Make sure you're testing it in the tool to see that it is rendering it correctly. Play around between the different applications to see how it's going to be rendering. That way you can start to see it a lot better. Okay. So with that, everyone, thanks to Stack for your time. Hope you found this valuable and you got to learn something. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do with adaptive cards in the future. And hopefully we'll be able to show you this whole experience when it comes to the new PVA interface when it comes in November. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jonathan. There's a huge round of applause in the room, but you just couldn't hear it.
Okay. Thanks all.
David, have you got a tech tip for us?
Yes, I do. So I'm going to share my screen now. I hope that.
But is it as good as my tech tip? Eh?
Probably not. No, that expression builder that old thing is terrible. It's like trying to. I don't even know what to compare. It's terrible. It's just impossible to work with. All right. So, by show of hands, who's played around with formula columns before in Dataverse or PowerFX formula columns? So,
everyone in the room's hand is up.
Yeah, awesome. So, I've got a few questions. Who can help? So basically, it's currently in a preview state, but there's like we all know, if it's in preview, it's good to go. So you can really start using it in production. No, I'm kidding. So if you use it, I really advise you to start playing with it and get familiarize yourself with it. It's so much better than the old calculated columns. So I want to show you quickly how to start making use of it and how to start playing around with it, and then just showing a very simple use case on how you could use it. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And let me know when you can see my screen.
It's good online.
All right, fantastic. So there's a URL in here. We'll post it in the chat a little bit later, but just to give you a little bit of an introduction to the formula columns and how to use it. So first of all, because it's in preview, if you just go to make.powerapps.com, you won't be able to create a formula column. So it's important that you go to make.preview.powerapps.com, and then you'll be able to do that. So you'll see this is a very simple expense claim entity, and that's got a few columns in here. One of the columns is an amount column, and that's just a whole number. So what we want to do in this use case is just to bucket the amounts for the different expenses together in some, in some buckets. So we typically want to say, all the expenses that are smaller than $1,000 or rand or whatever. And then you might say, all of the ones bigger than 2,000 or 5,000, and then you break it up in these buckets. So I know in Power BI, for Michael and the guys in the room, the Power BI experts, they're probably laughing right now because it's just so easy to do in Power BI. But in the reality is it's not that simple in Power Apps. So what I'm going to show you is how you can actually do that. So first of all, you'll see that we're in make.preview.powerapps.com, and that's giving us a whole bunch of new exciting features. So one thing, if you go and create a new column, you'll note that's not what I want to do. Let's go to there and then say new. Where is it now? It was there a minute ago. So where am I now? So that's in the right version or the right environment. Yes. Okay, so there's my expense form. This is looking a little bit better. So from here, let's go and create a column, see what the options are. No, why can't I see that now? That's a fail. Let's go into columns, new column.
Was you jinxed the
There we
demo
go.
cards earlier?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I did do that. You're right. So sorry, let me just backtrack. So I'm in columns, and if you go into new column, and if you go into data type, you'll see right at the bottom, you've got a formula column. And this allows you to write Power FX the same way that you would do in a Canvas app or in a custom page or anything like that. So what we're now going to do is simply tell it that if the amount, so you'll see IntelliSense is picking that up, is smaller than, let's say, I don't know, 100, then we want to display smaller than 100 in text. And then we would typically just repeat that. If it's smaller than 500, we'll update the text. And let's do one more, let's say 1,000. And then if not, it's just then obviously greater than 1,000. All right, so there's a very simple PowerFX formula. To do this currently without the formula columns would be quite challenging actually, and you'd probably need Power Automate or something like that to do this for you. So let's go and say amount bucket, and we can go and save this column. If we go and preview this, so you've got just a screen open that's just previewing this data. If you haven't worked with the new Data Explorer yet, it's fantastic. It really is good. So over here, we can just go and expand this and edit this data. And you'll see that there's some expenses with some amounts entered into the data. And we can now go and expand this to also show the amount bucket, which is showing up over here. And if we save this, you'll see that this is automatically lighting up with the right information. So, and it's very responsive. So if I go and update this value, so let's make that 1,001 Dalmatians, you'll see that that immediately updates the formula column in the backend. And this is then easily accessible from various places in the environment. So If you haven't worked with formula columns again or yet, I would definitely recommend that. It's in preview at the moment, but I'm sure it'll be launching soon. So any questions?
I have a question.
Yep.
So if you add the formula column through make.preview.powerapps.com, but now you go back to make.powerapps.com, I'm assuming the column is still there. You just can't edit it in any way.
Yes, it's still there and it still works and it's lovely. The biggest problem is that I've seen is the moment you now want to include this in a solution and you want to publish it to another environment in a managed solution, then typically the wheels come off. But if you go and display this, this is now without the preview bit and all of it is still functional, because if you go to make.preview, it just changes the UI. The backend on the server stuff is still exactly the same. So stuff is there. It just doesn't allow you to play with it if you don't have the make.preview in the URL.
Oh, this is very useful.
Yeah,
I had an issue actually this last week where I was trying to auto-generate a document from a Word template. And when you use the built-in feature to do that, all you can do, in quotes, all you can do is drag and drop field names into your document, so for the merge. But sometimes you want to manipulate those fields values before they show up in the document. So
Yeah,
I wanted to trim out some stuff. It was for a signature field.
And
so this would be perfect.
There's actually quite a lot that you can do with this. I mean, these are all the functions that are currently supported. So obviously you're not going to do a filter and these sort of things, but anything that talks about modifying and manipulating the data in the table, it's fantastic. For anybody who's tried to use calculated columns and date fields in Dataverse, that is an absolute nightmare. Where with this, it is just so unbelievably easy to do. Another example, we actually did this very recently as well, for a client who they've got a date and then they just want a simple column to say, categorize these dates in buckets into the future. So show me all the ones that are with all the dates that are within a month or within 2 months or 6 months or whatever the case may be. And then you can just very easily do this. While I was working with that, I also noticed, and I really have to commend Microsoft on this. If you go into a date column like this one, and this is all in the new Data Explorer, if you go and filter this date column, I don't know if you've noticed all of the options that they give you. In the old days, it'll give you like 5, and then you have to struggle to use one that says if it doesn't have data. Where with this, it shows you on or after, on or before, today. But if you scroll down, it starts doing very funky stuff like next X amount of days, next amount of months, next physical period. Like what? So you simply select that, you put in a number, and it'll just filter the data for you out of the box. So this is phenomenal. This is really sexy stuff. This is when it looks like somebody was really paying attention when they developed this piece of functionality. So any other questions about formula columns?
David, Monet, if you change the formula, would it update the existing records?
Yes. It's beautiful. And it's fast. It's really, I'm having so much fun with this right now.
Can you do a lookup to another table in that formula?
No.
So if you're doing anything data related, it would be either a built-in function like date or based on values that are in that row that you're on, essentially.
Correct. Yeah, so these are all of the functions that are supported. So I think if you're still gonna, I suspect you're still gonna be, for more complex stuff, you're probably still gonna use Power Automate or something, but for date columns, just out of the box is a nightmare to do calculations on. With this, it's just so easy. Cool. Any other questions?
It would be interesting to see if you can use things like virtual tables.
Tables. I haven't tried that yet. That's a great point, because then your lookup question goes away, Michael. But I suppose you could also, it's understanding if you could, to what extent you can use just normal lookup or relationship columns in this table even.
So if you go edit that column and use the owner field, you're saying that won't work.
I don't know. Let's check that. So what do you want to check in the owners field as an example? So let's say
Just the
if
owner, okay.
owning user, owner dot
Doesn't get, oh, there we go.
Okay, that's interesting. So full name. Well, let's actually just get that for whatever reason. So there's Monai's test. And so we go in here and we want to show, probably needs to just go back. There's my nice test. Sure, that's impressive, eh?
Interesting.
I wouldn't even have been mad if that didn't work. But this is awesome. So I can't wait for this to be generally available, which I think it will be soon.
It would be interesting to see if you can have, I don't know, something like is an activity, let's say phone call activity, and you've got the, I don't know, last phone call date, so the phone call would be related record. And that field would be, I guess, a date field on when that phone call was created. That would be quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think how you're going to figure out which one was the last one with these functions. You could probably get all of them.
I think there was a first, or
no, I don't think there are any sort of array or table type functions on this. But that might be a good thing to test and interesting to play with.
No, not a SQL guy or something, but would max not work, where you could do a max lookup last date or something?
So max is not gonna, so this max, if you pass it values, it's gonna tell you which one is the biggest.
Oh, okay.
But it's not gonna filter your date or anything. So you can probably get the latest date. If you give it a bunch of dates, it'll tell you what's the biggest one, but it's not going to really help you to get to the rest of that record. So that could be part of the answer, yeah. But yeah, anyway, so that's PowerFX formulas for you.
that's very cool.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we're all going crazy here. We're like stamping our feet. Thanks, dude.
Awesome.
Awesome. We're going to end it.
There's a community discussion still.
Our food is here. They've
Oh,
bought
is that why?
Magnums. What else do they have here? They've got a huge box of Magnum, any flavor you like. There's some caviar. Yeah. Pizza. Beer. And I think they're giving away free T-shirts, bags, and $100 voucher. But anyway, I think maybe you guys should come to the venue next time around.
Absolutely. So we still have the community discussion. I don't know if you guys want to go and dig into your hamburgers, or do you want to take 5 minutes and give this a quick discussion around what are sure ways to make sure that your project fail?
What are sure ways to make sure that your project fails?
Yes. So in other words, if you don't want your project to be a success, do these things.
Okay. Okay, we've got a few minutes. I know we're going to be kicked out at 6 o'clock. So
Okay. Anybody want to come up with some things from experience that they know that came back to bite them?
I think I'm living it right now. Missing, not reading emails.
Sorry, not doing what?
Not reading my emails.
During the project.
I was going to
Yeah.
say turn on experimental features.
Yeah, actually, I've learned that today. I'm just going to turn on experimental features for everything now. I think that's where the cool stuff is.
Yeah, that's what the cool kids do, apparently. Yeah, so I think from my side, I think one of the key things that I've seen is if there's no business or system owner, and preferably one person who's assigned from business to be in charge of that application. So if you're building a process or an application, it's absolutely imperative to have one person call the shots on what goes in from a functionality perspective. So if you don't have that individual and you try and open that up to too big an audience, it really becomes difficult to, if you try and please everybody, the project just runs away. So I think that's one of the key things that we typically, at the start of every project, make sure that there's one business owner assigned to that application. Any other thoughts? Erika, I know you've been on a couple of projects. I'm sure you've got a few that you can list.
Hi, David. You can't even see me in the room.
But I know you're there.
So something I actually learned yesterday that was quite interesting for me might be obvious to some, but wasn't to me, is we had to check if someone actioned a SharePoint item using Power Automate. And if not, then it needs to escalate. So obviously I used the trigger that says check if when an item has been created or modified. And I was just using that trigger item's dynamic values right through the Power Automate. So our escalations were triggered irrespective of the status actually being updated. And that was quite a brain scratcher. So it turned out that it doesn't take the current value. It takes whatever it was when it was first uploaded, and it kept that value. So it never took any of the changes. So I had to get the file properties before I do the escalation, just to make sure that it has actually not changed or has changed, so it doesn't escalate. So that was something interesting for me.
Yeah, that does sound like a head scratcher. Anybody else? Michael, have you ever been on a project that wasn't a success?
Sorry, what did you say?
Have you ever been on a project that wasn't a success?
No. I think the key is don't have Michael on your project. It's doomed to failure if you have me.
And then obviously another one on Power Apps is,
Yeah.
and this is a common thing we actually see, is people think because it's low code, you can skimp on planning because it's easy. It's just, it's Power Apps. And what we typically find is obviously that's not true. You're just going to get yourself in a pickle sooner with Power Apps than the project's just going to fail sooner than it was going to be with a coding platform. So don't skimp on planning.
And food.
So I get the feeling that's all you've got in your mind right now.
The door's open, yeah. We're all itching to get out there and eat the food.
All right, I'll shut up.
Thanks, online team. Thanks, offline team. We'll see you all here next month. Thanks, David. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all. Have a great evening.
Carry on online, but in the room here, we're out.
Great presentation, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Everybody.
See you all soon. Cheers.
Yes, bye.
Yes, bye-bye.